Hi, my name is Tonya Fairley, and today is my January 1st. Thank you for joining us at the Comeback Summit. I am pleased to be here with you, and I hope that you enjoy this message along with all the other speakers that are yet to come. Today, we're going to be talking about adversity, how to effectively lead through adversity. You may ask yourself, well, what makes you such an expert? Well, listen, adversity doesn't discriminate. We all have gone through something in life, and we will continue to go through things in life. But what makes a difference is how you handle it. How do you approach it? How do you move on from a setback? That's what I'm here to talk to you about today. Adversity will affect you in one way or the other, and how you address it will determine your outcome on the other side. None of us are excluded. None of us are going to escape it. But the reality of it is that we all will handle it differently. And by handling it differently will determine what your outcome is going to look like, what your future holds. What we have to remember is that regardless of anything that we face in life, you still have to conquer it. If you let it defeat you, or if you let it win, you'll be stuck in the same place, the same space that you were in a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, or even 5 years ago. And that, my friends, is not okay. When you start the journey of learning more about yourself and you start the process of moving forward so that you can become a better person and a better you, there's a lot of things that you have to tackle. And I think a lot of times what we forget is that going through an adversity is just a chapter in your book. It's not the period to your story. And I say that with confidence because me, as myself, I have gone through so many different challenges, even up until the summit, after having everything ready to go and just thinking that I had it all planned out, everything was going to be turned in on time. I faced adversity. But you know what? I decided that it wasn't going to win. And that's what I want to tell you is that no matter what you're going through, it doesn't have to win. But you can't do it by yourself. You can't come out of a storm by yourself. You have to acknowledge, one, what is going on. You have to decide what kind of plan you're going to have so that you don't have to go back through it. And you have to have the right mindset. See, facing adversity, sometimes it takes you all the way back. It could take you a halfway step back, or it can be your end all if you allow it. But the biggest thing that needs to change whenever you're going through anything is your mindset. Mindset mastery, once you get that down, everything is possible. Once you understand mindset mastery, you will be able to get to the root cause of what keeps holding you back or what's holding you back. Why haven't you gotten that promotion? Why aren't your kids doing fine? Why are you and your spouse having problems to communicate? Why do you not have any money? All that comes back to mindset, and it all goes through learning how to deal with adversity. You see, as a child, I started learning about adversity very, very early on in age. By the time I was 12 years old, not only had I been physically abused, mentally abused, but we had been placed in a foster home. And in this foster home, I thought to myself, how could anybody care and love about me if I'm in a foster home? If my own parents could not love and care about me enough, how could I be any good to anyone else? For a long time, I carried that. I carried that burden of thinking that I was never going to be good enough and that I didn't deserve to be loved. As I got older, I went through things. I continued to bring adverse actions to my own self. I continued to be angry, carry that torch of anger, carry that torch of resentment. And I realized that it wasn't really getting me anywhere for the long run. In the short run, yeah, I was fine, right? Because those people I didn't want to be around weren't around me. Those people who couldn't handle my attitude chose not to. But there comes a point in life where I have to take responsibility for myself. And I had to take responsibility for the things that I wanted. And even though I was still young and I was still going through school and navigating this thing called life, I still understood that I was the only person that could make my situation either worse or better. See, you don't think about those things when you're going through things. You just want to react. And I learned that reacting was one of the worst things that I could do. I learned that I had to take a deep breath first, analyze the situation, come up with a plan, and learn how to execute the plan that was going to benefit me, my future decisions for the long run. One of the things that I learned when I talk about mindset mastery is if I think I can, then I can. But the minute you start to think that you can't, guess what? You can't. Because why would your mind do anything other than what you're telling it to do? I learned that I had to heal myself from the inside out first in order for everything else to fall in place. Now, that journey wasn't easy. That journey was not one for the as they say, the lighthearted. That journey took some self-reflection. That journey required me to take a look at myself in the mirror and tear myself apart bit by bit. But I knew that if I did this, then there could only be something good from this. I knew that if I stopped blaming everyone else for all the things that were going on in my life, in my family, that things would eventually get better. But it started with me. And because it started with me, I had to get my mind ready so that my thoughts could come through clearly, so that I could take this journey and be a winner on the other side. I'm not here to tell you that that journey was easy. I lost some people along the way. See, there were people who were okay with me being angry, because then that meant they didn't have to answer for how they treated me. There were people okay with me being angry because they didn't have to answer with how they treated themselves. There were people okay with me being angry because they no longer had to wonder what was going to happen to me next. See, a lot of them had already written me off. I was in a foster home. I had been homeless. I had been physically abused by my mother. I had been sexually abused. I had just been alienating anything and everyone who came around me. And for a long time, I was okay with that. But again, I was bringing these adverse actions onto myself. I couldn't figure out, even as I got older, well, how come I'm not getting promoted? How come this business I started wasn't doing well? These are all things that I had to stop and take a look at a mirror in and say to myself, either you continue on this journey or you do something different. Doing something different required me to think differently. Doing something different required me to be a leader. Yes, I said a leader. Even through my adversities, I knew that I was born to show people that I can come through this, and so can you. See, no matter what adversities you face, it's all about how you handle it. And when you handle it and you look at it and you find the teaching lesson or the learning lesson through it, guess what? You're able to help someone else. Now, again, as I said before, looking at yourself in the mirror is not easy. Who wants to admit they have faults and flaws, right? Typically, we're like, oh no, I'm good. I can do that. I can handle that. And for the longest time, that's just how I live my life. I can do all things. And I know that the Bible says that I can do all things through Christ that strengthened me. But I wasn't Christ. But I walked around like I was. I walked around as if I could just be okay no matter what came at me and nothing was going to affect me, until one day I couldn't do that anymore. When I decided that I wanted to be a better person, not just for myself, but I wanted a better future, I knew that I had to change some things. So the first thing I decided to do was take a look at myself in the mirror. Let me tell you, that was one of the hardest decisions that I think I've ever made in my life. It was harder than walking away from a job. It was harder than walking away from my family. It was even harder than going through the perils of being in a foster home. Why? Because I was starting to live my truth. And by living my truth meant that I had to discover who I was and what was the root cause of me and the reason why I was going through some of the things that I was going through. Now, I'll be honest with you. I started that process probably 100 times. But that 99th time when I started and I didn't finish, I knew that if I was going to start it again, that I had to complete it. And I realized that it was time for me to heal. Now, healing for some of you, think about what that means. What does it mean for you to heal? Now, see, sometimes we have a wound. If you cut yourself, you get this wound, and the wound takes time to heal, right? So you go through where it has to stay open. It needs oxygen. Healing requires breathing. Then once it starts to, the cut starts to clear up, right? The skin starts to mend itself. Then you have a scab. Once the scab is done, the scab falls off. Then you have a discoloration. Once the discoloration goes away, then what do you have? Then you have a permanent reminder of something that you had been through. See, that's what healing is. It's definitely a permanent reminder of something that you've been through. But you get all the scars and you go through the transformation in the beginning. And then once you go through this transformation and you understand what time means, see, time is transformation, inspiration, motivation, and then empowerment. See, you have to transform your thoughts and your minds in order to become inspired. Because if you don't transform your thoughts and your minds, there's no inspiration feeding you. No one can penetrate you. Once you've transformed your thoughts and your mind and you're inspired, guess what? Now the motivation kicks in. Now you're motivating yourself and you're motivating others to not live as you did yesterday, but better today for tomorrow. Once you've done that, you got your transformation, you got your inspiration, and you got your motivation. Now guess what? Now you have empowered yourself and others to do more. See, I take this journey through work, through friendships, through relationships. I look at time. I look at the transformational piece. I look at the inspirational piece. I look at the empowerment piece. I look at the motivation piece. Because guess what? Unless you have those 4 elements instilled in you, you're going to be in the same place you were yesterday. Now, they don't come just like that. That transformation doesn't happen overnight. Transformation is a process. But when you take that first step at looking at yourself in the mirror, a transformation begins. I tell you this as a person who has been so far down that people did not think that I would be anything other than what society and statistics thought I would be. But shame on them. Because see, I did the work. I took the time out. I took the time to transform my mind so that I can think clearer and realize that the things that were going to feed me was going to also not only help transform me, but they were going to inspire me. When I decided that the things that were going to inspire me were also going to motivate me. So I started the transformation. I got the inspiration. I then began the motivation journey, right? Not only motivating myself, but motivating people around me. And then comes the empowerment. Empowerment for you is going to be something totally different, but you won't reach empowerment until you realize that you deserve it. That no matter what you've gone through, you don't have to stay there. See, understanding what time is a great tool because it allows you, once you value your time, you value your transformation, you value the inspiration around you, you value motivation and understand what that means, and now you're empowered, guess what? Now you can heal. See, you can't heal until you understand what the process is to get there. Healing means now you're going to humble yourself. See, I had to humble myself. I had to realize that if I wanted to be a better mother, a wife, a sister, an employee, a boss, that the world didn't stop around me. I may have wanted it to, but it didn't revolve around me. But I was humble enough to understand that I wanted to be more than what I was. And humbling yourself is one of the biggest parts of transformation that can take place. Learning to embrace you for who you are. See, for a long time, I didn't love me. And I couldn't love me because I felt that because I was in a foster home and my own mother didn't love me, how in the world can someone else love me? And because of that, I went through relationships that didn't serve me any purpose. Because of that, I wasted money on things that just brought me temporary satisfaction. But I learned that I had to embrace and love me. And then I had to accept me for who I was and who I wanted to be. And then I surrounded myself with people who accepted me for me. See, a lot of times, even in work, we go through this facade of being what someone else wants you to be. But until you accept your true, authentic self, no one else can. How can they get to know you? This is all a part of taking the time out to heal so that you can become better through your own adversities. And the last part of healing is understanding that you are to be loved. See, love is a big one for people. I know for me, going through a foster home, being abused, love was not something that I would ever understand as a child because my definition of love meant that somebody should be abusing me. It wasn't until I got older and I got kicked out my second high school. And my social worker at the time, she says, enough is enough. She says, you're the only foster kid that I have that's getting straight A's, and yet you're getting kicked out of a second high school. This makes no sense to me. And until you learn to love yourself, you're going to keep going through this. And I thought, well, what difference does it make? Ain't nobody going to love me anyway. If my own mother couldn't love me, how can I accept the love from you, from a man, from friends? How can anybody really be genuinely true to me when the person or the people who are responsible for instilling that in me were not around? I quickly learned, and I think it was Les Brown, that said that you have to take time out to get to know yourself before anyone else can get to know you. You see, when I went on that transformation journey, it wasn't just for me. It was for my future children. It was for my work. It was for my businesses that I would grow. But I went on that transformation journey, not understanding that there was still more healing that was going to take place. Oh, but when that healing started to take place, when I started to humble myself, when I started to embrace who I was, when I accepted me for who I was, loving me no longer became an issue. See, I don't do anything that I don't love to do. And when I became a leadership development coach, when I became a business coach, when I started opening up businesses, those were all things that pierced me because I knew at some point in life that, and through that transition, that I was giving back. I don't do anything that I don't love, and I definitely don't take part in anything that I can't give back to. See, being here today has allowed me to share a bit of myself with you, but also give you some hope to say, what is it in my life that's holding me back? And the hope is that you'll take a moment to say, this is the thing that I need to heal from. Let me take the time to transform, inspire, motivate myself, and embrace so that I can be humble, embrace more, accept me for who I am, and love the person that I'm going to be. Whether I'm in a relationship, whether I'm in an employee, whether I am a boss, in order for you to get to the next step and become an effective leader, this is what you have to do. So my charge to you is this: what's holding you back? Figure that out. Write it down. And once you do that, take those steps to heal. Because without healing, you're keeping yourself at that first chapter of your book. And when you heal, you'll be able to put your periods to every chapter you write thereafter. Thank you. My name is Tonya Fairley. You can find me at info@TonyaFairley.com. But I appreciate you and I appreciate where you're going. And remember, today is my January 1st and it can be yours too.